So today we live in a world of false narratives. And false narratives, they have a beginning. They have a starting point. Right? And Paul talked about that starting point. Right? But it might have been James. Where it talks about the love for money is the root of every kind of evil. Yeah, 1 Timothy 6 and verse 10. And there's another one too. James mentions something like this in James 3:16 or 18. I'll go to that too. 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And in other translations says every kind of evil, all right? False narratives are included. Lies, okay? Every single kind of evil. Is a lie evil? Yes, it is. What drives it? Love for money, according to Paul. Now, James, he goes a little bit further. James 3:16. For where envying is strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. Every evil work, including lies and false narratives, yes. Jealousy and selfish ambition. What drives selfish ambition, folks? Isn't it the love for money? All right. I think I'll go to Strong's Concordance on this, as I usually do. Envying, eagerness, zeal, rivalry. Rivalry, actually, the word strife is actually arithea, which means rivalry, hence ambition. What drives ambition, folks? Love for money, fame, and fortune. That's what we all know this, okay? What am I getting at? All right? Let's first, before I get to the subject matter at hand, I want to go to 1 Corinthians. I will start in verse 15, okay? And you will soon learn the subject matter that Paul is talking about in this particular chapter. For I have used none of these things. What things? Huh? I have used none of these things, neither have I written these things, that it should be done so unto me. For it would be better for me to die than that any man should make my glorying void. What was he glorying in? His preaching the gospel. What is the gospel? You can read it in Hebrews 8 verses 8 through 12, and you can read it in Romans 11 verses 25 through 27. And of course that makes people very angry, inside, sometimes outside as well. Because how dare Paul and how dare I disrupt their false narrative? Okay. For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of, except necessity that is laid upon me. Huh? No, he didn't live in some fancy house. wear fancy clothing, drive around in a long limousine and jet airplanes. No. He said the only thing he had to glory is that necessity was laid upon him, that he was poor. Yes, woe unto me if I preach not the gospel. But if I do this willingly, I have a reward. But if against my will a dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me, what is my reward then? Verily, that when I preach the gospel, that I make the gospel of the Messiah, not Christos, Messiah, without charge. You see those two words? Without charge, without payment. Well, that really gets the preachers upset. Why? So that I abuse not my power in the gospel. Is he saying that accepting payment for preaching is abuse of power? Yes, he is. Okay. So, what people will do, what the preachers will do, is they will read verse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, but they will avoid reading 15, 16, 17, and 18. And when they do that, they are changing the narrative into their own narrative, and their own narrative is that they should be paid. But Paul set the example that they shouldn't be paid. Now, we're going to get into false narratives. Okay? So I have a question. Is an old man sliding down the chimney a truthful narrative, or is it a false narrative? You know, the one that you tell your children about every so-called December 25th? Is it true or is it false? You be the judge of that. Okay? Is it true that a Messiah rose on Easter Sunday? When you look in the scripture, he was already raised from the dead, walking around on the streets on the seventh day of the week, which was the Jewish Sabbath. So, is then him rising on Sunday morning, is that a truthful narrative or a false narrative? When Messiah had conceived on the 6th month, I believe it was the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar, we go to Luke chapter 1. All right? I have done this one many times. This is very simple math, folks. It's not hard to understand. Let's see. All right. And in the 6th month on the Hebrew calendar, The angel Gabriel was sent by Jehovah unto a city of Galilee, named Nazareth, and to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary? No, her name was Miriam. Don't believe it? Get your Strong's Concordance out and you'll see it. Her name was Miriam. And the angel came in unto her and said, Rejoice, be glad. You are highly favored. You have been endowed with grace. Jehovah is with you. Blessed are you among women. When she saw him, she was troubled at this saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation that this should be. And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Miriam, not Maria, not Mary, Miriam. For you have found favor with Jehovah, and behold, you shall conceive in your womb, and bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus? No! Miriam spoke Hebrew, and the form of Hebrew that was spoken in those days was Aramaic. Therefore, the name could not have been Jesus or Iesos. It had to be Yehoshua. Yehoshua. And he shall be great, shall be called the Son of the Highest. And right there, folks, that destroys the other false narrative that the Son is somehow equal with the Father. He's not. The highest is the highest. Everyone else is inferior to him, including the Son. Son of the highest. And Jehovah Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father David. Where will the throne of David be? Where it was originally, in Jerusalem. On the earth. How many false narratives have been destroyed in this one particular passage? But the one that I wanted to talk about is in the very first sentence. Oh, wait a minute. Let's not miss the last one. And shall reign over the house of Jacob. Notice it says Jacob forever. Okay. So, when it says the house of Jacob forever, it destroys the false narrative that somehow the church replaces Israel. You see? He says the house of Jacob. It is impossible. You cannot spiritualize the house of Jacob away, you see. Now, I want to go to the first sentence. It says the sixth month. The sixth month. Let's see. Let's go look on the Hebrew calendar. Sixth month. Hebrew calendar. All right. Well, I have to go. Here we go. I think this one will give it to me. All right, Nisan is the first month. ER is the second month. Sivan is the third month. Tammuz is the fourth month. Av is the fifth month. Elul is the sixth month. So he was conceived in the month of Elul, which is around August and September on the Roman calendar. So every baby I know is typically born 9 months later. So since he was a perfectly normal child, having a perfectly normal birth, we can safely assume that he was born 9 months later. Now let's count the months. Okay? Tishri would be then begin the first month of his, or would be the complete the first month of the pregnancy. So Tishri, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevlet, Shevet, Adar, Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan. All right? Can anybody tell me what holy day is in the month of Sivan? It's Shavuot, or as the Christians call Pentecost. What does it mean? What does it stand for? All right. It was originally a harvest festival. First fruit harvest festival. Okay? Yeshua, Messiah, is the first fruit of many brethren. Right? First Corinthians 15:20. Now Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep. All right? Just as he is the firstborn from the dead with respect to many brethren. In other words, he's saying he's the firstborn among many brethren, just as it says in Romans 8 and verse 29. So the holy day Shavuot fits, which means the Christmas narrative is a false narrative. Where does false narratives come from? Somebody getting paid. Did Paul get paid? He says no, he did not. You see? Now, going to the false narrative of Daniel 9, I want to go into a little bit greater detail as to how the false narrative occurred. In order to avoid false narratives, folks, you must endeavor to search for the truth. Otherwise, you'll never find the truth, because it is written. It is written in Deuteronomy 4:29, but if you seek Jehovah your Elohim, you will find him. If you seek him with all of your heart and with all of your soul, you will find him. Okay? And it's many, 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 many scriptures. All right. So if you want to know the truth, you have to seek the truth. And you have to do it with all of your heart. There can be no half-heartedness about it. And yesterday, in my video, I told anyone who's willing to listen to me on YouTube that the reason why I did not fully understand Daniel 9 was because I did not search it out. What do I mean by that? Well, the portion of the time frame when the wall and the streets were built. They were built in the days of Nehemiah the prophet. I had to finally ask myself yesterday, When was the wall and the street built? I went to look. When I finally looked, I found it. Imagine that. It's just that simple. All you have to do is look, seek, and you will find it. I found it. So I had to announce that my opinion about Daniel 9, even though it was mostly right, was changed. And because no money, no taking of money was involved in it, I had no reason to hold on to an incorrect narrative. I was in fact happy to find the truth and happy to point out the error, while on the other hand, evangelicals and others, they have gone from one error to an even worse error because of refusing to find the truth, and for the sake of money, for the sake of power and prestige, hold on to a false narrative. So I read yesterday somewhere about concerning evangelicals and how the old evangelicals, they believe that the entire chapter of Daniel 9 has come and gone. It was concerning the destruction of Jerusalem in the days of 67 AD to 70 AD. And in that respect, the 67 AD to 70 AD portion, they were correct. They were correct. So they had the narrative partially right, but they also had it partially wrong. They thought that the whole chapter involved in the past. Part of the chapter involved the past and part of it didn't. And so, in order to fix this situation publicly, I am going to endeavor to explain this in the most simple way that I possibly can, so that everyone who listens to this video will have no problem understanding it. Okay? Now, if we go to Daniel 9, once again, for the 100th time probably, but it is absolutely important to understand Daniel 9 so that you do not get thrown off when the days of wrath begin. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to point out that in verse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that Daniel prays in fasting, sackcloth, and ashes for Jerusalem. In verse 7, he is the text, continues the text of his prayer. Verse 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. All of that is the text of Daniel's prayer, asking for forgiveness of himself, his people Israel, and the restoration of Jerusalem. And so Gabriel comes while he was praying, quickly. Verse 20, while I was speaking, praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Jehovah my Elohim, not the Lord my God. See, that's another false narrative. You got to get rid of every single false narrative. For the holy mountain of my Elohim. What is the holy mountain? That would be Jerusalem. Yes, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I have seen in the vision in the beginning, had been caused to fly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, and he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill and understanding at the beginning of this supplication. The command came forth, and I am come to show you, for you are greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter. Now, if he came to show Daniel, and he wanted him to understand, what it means is it should not be difficult for you or I to understand either. And consider the vision. So he says 70 weeks, so a total of 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city to finish the transgression. Now let's, as I said, let's go to Strong's Concordance and read this. 70 weeks. Many people might not know about what weeks means in it's Shabuah. Shabuah, a period of 7 days or years. You see, or a period of 7 days or years. Okay. So it can be, this weeks could be a period, 1 week could be a period of 7 years. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So, conventional wisdom, theological wisdom, and it's correct that then 70 weeks would be, let's see, yeah, 70 times 7 is 490 years, right? Once again, you look up the word week, it's Shabuah. It's either a period of a week, is either a period of 7 days or 7 years. We don't use our language like that in English. So that's why you have to go to Strong's Concordance and make sure you get it. All right? Okay. Upon your people, upon your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins. Make an end of sins for who? The people of Israel and the holy city. To make reconciliation, that means to bring them back for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision of the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. When it says most holy, it says holy, holy, which means holy of holies. In other words, the holy of holies would be once again, the only way the Holy of Holies can be reanointed is if our Father in heaven is standing or sitting there on his throne. You see. And the Son, the Messiah, he would be the one, the priest, who is able to go to the Holy of Holies on the behalf of Israel. Okay? Now, 70 weeks. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to... Now, before I continue, notice how the writing here divides the 77s into 3 portions. 3 portions. 62 weeks, 7 weeks, and 1 week. Okay? Now, we should use our thinking capability to understand this, that the writing is not in how do I put this, in a time order. Now, to say that it's sloppy because it's not in a time order would be hypocritical, because we here, using the English language, do the same thing in our speech. All right. So how is it divided? How are the 70 weeks divided into 3? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah, the Prince, the leader, the ruler. Let me ask you a question. When Messiah came the first time, was he a ruler? Did he rule Israel? No, he did not. He said, my kingdom is not of this age. He didn't say of this world, he said of this age. So he was not a ruler. Therefore, the 7 weeks that was apportioned to this time frame had nothing to do with his first coming. When he comes as a ruler, 7 weeks from the call to rebuild Jerusalem, that call was made by General Shlomo Goren in June 7, 1967. On what day? Shavuot. I mentioned Shavuot, didn't I? Well, the 49 years came and went, did it not? Yes, it did. Does it have to happen exactly after 7 sevens? No. Things have to be put in place. And I'll tell you, things were already starting to get put in place in 2015, the year before the 7 sevens were complete. Then there had to be a Jubilee year. This according to the Jews. I agree with them. 2017. I don't have can't name the year on the Hebrew calendar right off. And then came the announcement that the most, how do I put this, the most influential nation upon the earth would put their embassy in Jerusalem. Very significant. Everything just seems to be falling in line and getting ready for the nations to try to come against Jerusalem and reverse this trend. You see. Because the nations are going to come and fight against the Messiah, who will put his throne in Jerusalem. And the Father, his location will be at where the Holy of Holies used to be. All right. Then it says, so we've got one of the divisions of 7 weeks. And then he talks about a division of 62 weeks. And this is in the same, in the same verse. 62 weeks from when the street and the wall is going to be built in troublous times. And verse 26 says, from that point, from the 62 weeks, is when Messiah will be cut off. The suffering servant. That is your second division of the 7 weeks. And if you notice, the evangelicals always say 69 weeks. Nowhere in here does it say 69 weeks. It divides it into 3 portions. 62 weeks from the time where they were building or finished building the street and the wall in troublous times. Why? Let me explain something here. So Nehemiah, his brother, informs him how badly Jerusalem's walls and the streets and the sepulchres were deteriorated. And it made Nehemiah terribly sad. He was Artaxerxes' food taster, wine taster. Okay? So, that means he'd be his right-hand man. So Artaxerxes noticed that he was not happy. And he asked him, why are you sad? And he told him why. And he asked him, let me go down and let me go rebuild the streets and the wall and the sepulchres and straighten things up. He had to convince, apparently, I think he left a year later, which was the conversation with Artaxerxes took place in 445 BC. He left Persia in 444 BC. And he gave Artaxerxes a time frame when he would be back, which was 434 BC, when he would come back, when his job was complete. But it only took 51 days. If it took 51 days to build the wall, did it take that long to organize the building? It may have. They ran into a lot of trouble. And Nehemiah had to get letters from the king to tell those enemies across the Jordan River and across the Euphrates River to they may not stop the Jews from rebuilding the streets and the wall. Notice there's nothing in here about rebuilding the temple. It says rebuilding the streets and the wall on this 62-week portion. And it doesn't say the beginning. It doesn't say the middle. It doesn't say the end of when the wall and the street was being built is the marker. All it says is the 62-week portion is from the building of the street and the wall until Messiah is cut off. But one point in history that we know, once Nehemiah was finished with his work, he left Jerusalem and went back and reported to the king on the year 434. Is it 434 BC? I believe it was. Okay? So, let's get on the calculator here. Does anybody know what 62 times 7 is? 434 years exactly. So exactly 434 years from the time that Nehemiah was finished with his work and to report back to the king as he promised, to Messiah was cut off. Exactly. Now, why hasn't your preacher you evangelicals, I have a question for you. Why has your preacher not endeavored to seek this out and find this? The answer is because it does not fit the narrative. What is a false narrative driven by? Money. And I have pointed out in many of my YouTube videos, I do not have a Patreon account. I do not accept money for these videos. I do this on my own time and on my own money, so that I will not be influenced by one single penny from anyone. I want my influence to be only the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and anything else is secondary. Which is why I have found out about what the time frame was from the 434 years or the 62 sevens, when the clock began ticking. All you have to do is just count backwards from the time that Messiah was cut off and who the prophet was at that time, and bammo, you come to the street and the wall being built. You see? Okay, which leaves us with the 1-7. Once again, as I'm telling you, don't sit here and complain that the timeline, is not in alphabetical or numerical order. Don't be upset about that. When Gabriel was talking about this, he was not concerned with numerical or alphabetical order or timeline order. What was more important was matching events with the portions of the week. And how do I put this? And so, he had to impress upon Daniel about the Roman prince, how the Roman prince was going to destroy Jerusalem and the temple again. And he probably made that his last announcement to Daniel, because if it would have been the first one, it probably would have crushed him immediately on the spot. But no, what Gabriel did was talk about forgiveness, reconciliation, and all the good things. He talked about that first to lift him up, to make him realize there is going to be this thing that Daniel asked for is going to happen. Have some confidence, have some faith, but some bad things have to happen first. And he saved that one for last. Okay? That may be the reason. So, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, a flood of people, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he who? He, the Roman general. What was his name? Or the Roman prince, I should say. The Roman prince was Titus, the son of Vespasian, the king. Shall make firm a covenant with Israel. It does not say with Israel. Why are the evangelicals today claiming it's talking about the Jews? It's not. It says with many. When you go and read your history, you will find that Titus, the prince, made a pact with his legions. The amount of time that was allotted to destroy or to take Jerusalem was 7 years. They were given a time frame. You have to organize your armies and tell them, say, look, we're going to besiege the city for 10 years. I'm sorry, for 7 years. So, to besiege the city for 7 years, that was the covenant. That was the compact. And the other part of the compact and the covenant was they were not going to destroy the temple, but that they were going to bring it to the Pantheon in Rome. I dare you to go and Google it. You will find it. But after 3.5 years, Titus's army lost patience. They couldn't take it anymore. And against the orders of Titus himself, disobeying the orders, they went in and they wrought havoc on the place, and they burned the temple, leaving not one stone on top of the other. The Western Wall today is not the wall of the temple. It is a wall of the Roman fortress. So, that's how you know that he made a covenant with many for 1 week or 7 years, and in the midst of the week, 3.5 years, he did cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. The war began the spring of 67 A.D. On July the 14th, 70 A.D., the sacrifices were caused to cease. That is recorded in history, if you want to go and look it up. August the 10th, 70 A.D., which was the 9th of Av on the Hebrew calendar, the temple was burning. The war was over. September 8th, 70 A.D., 3.5 years later. Which means the entire 77s are complete. It's over. The only thing we have left to wait for is Messiah the Prince. But what's happened is this false narrative that the evangelicals have, it began with a small false narrative claiming that Daniel 9 has long since been passed, all of it, when the glaring truth points out that the holy place has not been anointed yet. The complete forgiveness of Israel's sins has not happened yet. Reconciliation with the Almighty has not happened yet. Reconciliation will come when Israel's Messiah comes to take the kingdom. So the evangelicals went from one false narrative and then made it worse. And they completely corrupted their narrative of Daniel 9 from top to bottom. And because of that corruption, they now believe that Israel's true Messiah is their Antichrist. This is what happens when you let money influence, money, power, prestige influence the narrative. Let this be a warning to everyone. Beware the false narrative.